For those of you who were not born yet, I'm sorry you missed it. No one who witnessed the drama unfolding that Tuesday night in Atlanta in 1996 will ever forget it. The U.S. Women's Olympic gymnastic team had erased a lead the Russian team had established and had actually overtaken them by a small margin. As the competition for the team championship wound to a conclusion, the U.S. team held tenaciously to a narrow lead. When a Russian woman slipped on the balance beam, victory for the U.S. team seemed all but assured. All 14-year-old sensation Dominique Moceanu had to do was score better than 9.4 out of a possible 10 on the pommel horse vault, and victory would be assured. Moreover, she had 2 chances at this, and the higher of the 2 scores would be counted. Some Team U.S. supporters were already beginning to celebrate. Dominique began her run. She vaulted cleanly but fell as she landed, scoring far short of the 9.4 needed. No matter, she had a second vault. Determination was written all over her face as she began her run. She vaulted cleanly but fell again as she landed. 30,000 people in the stands and millions who were watching on live television groaned because it seemed that the hopes that we had perhaps disintegrated before our very eyes. But the team was subdued but not devastated, for Carrie Strug, an 18-year-old veteran of the 92 Olympic Games, stood ready to rescue the day. But because of Dominique's fall twice, Carrie had to score at least a 9.6. She began her run, and every heart in the stadium, or the arena, began to beat as one. All eyes were on her as she vaulted beautifully, but unbelievably fell as she landed. Shocked, the crowd groaned and then grew silent as it became apparent that Carrie had injured her left ankle when she landed. As she hobbled off the mat, wincing in pain and limping noticeably, everyone watching believed that the gold medal had just slipped from the grasp of the American team. What had seemed so certain just moments before now seemed out of reach. Could Carrie even make a second attempt? And if so, how could she possibly land cleanly as she needed to with an injured ankle? Above the murmur of the crowd, the voice of the team's coach, Bella Caroli, sounded, "You can do it. You can do it." Hopping lightly to test the ankle, she took her place, eyeing the pommel horse in the distance as though it were a creature to be subdued. Determination was etched on her face, and she drove the pain and previous failure from her mind as she raced toward her moment of destiny. With this one vault, could she, despite the pain and the previous failure, bring glory to her team, to her country, and to herself? She sprang forward, twisting, turning, flipping, and landed basically on her right foot, favoring the left. But she had done it. She had done it. Immediately, however, we knew something was wrong. After standing long enough for the vault to count, she collapsed on the mat and crawled to the edge. Two coaches rushed to her side and helped her to the team's bench. We learned later that she had torn 2 ligaments in her ankle. And after getting her ankle wrapped and splinted, she took her place with her teammates on the podium to receive the gold medal. America was proud of their new heroines, but especially of Carrie, whose determination and sacrifice earned her the admiration and respect of the entire nation. I think the Apostle Paul may have been an athlete in his younger years. At least he was a great fan of the games. Often he used athletic illustrations to get across a point he was trying to make. He said to the Corinthians, "Therefore, do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air." To Timothy, he wrote, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Therefore, there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord will award to me." And the author of Hebrews wrote, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily entangle us, and let us run with patience and endurance the race that is set before us." And of course, in the passage we just read earlier, Paul describes an athlete nearing the finish line. The goal is in sight, and with every ounce of determination and every fiber of his strength, he is pushing, straining toward the tape. For them, it is impossible to imagine that the Christian life does not require effort. It's hard. It's like running a race. It requires the best we've got. It requires maximum effort, straining ahead with every ounce of our strength to the finish line. Paul said, "Straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal, toward the prize of the heavenly call of God in Christ Jesus." In your mind's eye, can't you see him straining for the finish line? The Christian life is sometimes hard. It requires effort. The message is clear. Paul says, "I can't claim to perfectly reflect Christ's image, but I do the very, very best that I can to attain it." He's trying to fulfill Christ's purpose for him. No doubt throughout his life, Paul reflected on that Damascus Road experience when Jesus appeared to him and called him to be his apostle. He says Jesus took hold of him on that journey. And now Paul must take hold of the purpose for which Jesus took hold of him. In truth, doesn't that apply to each one of us? When we acknowledged Christ to be God's Son and declared our faith in him through baptism, did not Jesus take hold of us? Not with the same dramatic impact as with Paul, perhaps, but certainly as truthfully. And as surely as Jesus has taken hold of us, he has for each of us a purpose or calling for which we must strive to take hold. Our ultimate calling is to become like Christ, of course. But between now and then, we will be called to do and be many other things for Jesus. Paul says that he has not done this perfectly. This passage is a little bit confusing because at one point Paul says, I've not done this perfectly, but then later he calls us in this same passage to be perfect. And the problem is often with our English translation of a Greek word, teleos. The Greek word, as it's used generally, does not apply to a moral perfection or even an artistic perfection, but to a kind of functional perfection. 3 weeks ago, I had a knee joint replaced. Is that joint perfect? Well, with apologies to Dr. Peerless, who incidentally, Adam, I invited to join our choir. He's Jewish. But upon finding that out, I said, great, you're not committed on Sunday mornings. But with apologies to Dr. Peerless, I don't expect this new joint to be as much a part of my body as the old joint, but it's functionally perfect. It does what it's supposed to do. And that's the perfection Paul is talking about with himself and with us. We are perfect in the sense that we are doing what Christ has called us to do. Moving back to the '96 Olympics. Carrie and her teammate had both fallen. Carrie was injured. She had one more attempt. Her coach called to her, "You can do it. You can do it." And so in our calling, in our purpose, in doing what Christ has called us to do, we may not do it without fault. We may fall. The sin that we drag along with us might entangle us and cause us to stumble and fall, but Christ does not give up. There is another run to make, another chance. You can do it. You can do it. And all around us, unseen, but present, that great cloud of witnesses, those who have gone before us, who are filling the stands around us, watching as we take our place to begin our run. And they are cheering us. You can do it. You can do it. Can't you hear them?